As I said, and I've been saying for 20 years, the QLA is seminar is like sex. It all comes at the end. And so from yesterday after lunch to today at the close, we will go through, in addition to step 5, 6, and 7, including how to exit. The last night you saw, too big to fail. And what did they say at the end? When he looked up at the window, the Secretary Treasurer, and what did they say?
Hope they will.
Hope they will put out the money, which they didn't. Anybody that was part of the financial world at any senior level knew that they were not going to put out the money. So why did they do it then? Why did the government, in its infinite wisdom, bail out the financial institutions when clearly some of the financial institutions didn't want to be bailed out, i.e. Wells Fargo wasn't in trouble and a couple others weren't in trouble. And the poor little Lehman Brothers got kicked to the curb. So why did they do that? Why did they save the financial institutions?
Well, I mean, in my opinion, they saved Goldman Sachs. They saved their buddies. They let Lehman go. They saved Goldman and.
Well, they saved a lot of other ones, not just Goldman.
Well, I know, but I mean, they definitely let Bear Stearns go, Lehman go, and then saved their buddies. And then they made AIG pay out 100% on their insurance contracts. A bankrupt company, you'd never make somebody do that. They paid them because they paid them to Goldman Sachs. So I think that's one of the big reasons. They want to be elected.
Yeah, it didn't have anything to do with what Matt just said, I don't believe. It's just because it was a political statement, because the legacy of who's going to let the banks all go down was blamed on who was in office at the time. And I personally believe that it would have been good. We would have gotten rid of a lot of our now $20 trillion in debt. But I'm fairly confident that if that happens again, if President Trump is in office, everybody's going down the shitter. It's going to be like the Tidy Bowl man, and he's going to just let it happen. And they were afraid that it would be the domino effect, and a lot of other financial institutions around the world would go, and we'd have a worldwide depression. I don't believe that. I believe that supply and demand is too smart for that. And we've had other financial crises in the 1700s, more markedly in the 1800s, and the bank crisis of 1807, and a bunch of other things that have happened in the 200 years. And we didn't go bankrupt. We did have some pretty hellacious recessions over the years, not the least of which was the Depression of 29, which lasted through 41, which I commented yesterday. In many people's judgment, the reason why FDR squeezed the Japanese so they'd start a war so we could pull the country out of the Depression, arguably the greatest depression that we've ever seen. But the bottom line of that movie is, should be, nothing's too big to fail. It shouldn't be. If supply and demand really works, and economics 101 really works, then nobody's too big to fail. But more importantly for you guys, I assure you, they won't do that for you. That's a given. That's an absolute. That's a fucking guarantee. 1,000%, they're not going to do that for you. They're not going to do that for you. And i.e., for example, there's countless companies, individuals that were taken to the wall during the 2008, 9, 10, 11, etc. But QLA worked. And we created some billionaires during that time. Because from chaos comes order. From chaos comes order. Now, I'm not wishing the country had go into a depression, but that's good for us. Because you talk about motivated sellers, you have no idea how motivated. You're talking about buying assets, a nickel on the dollar, 5 pence on the pound. and the banks with the existing credit will refinance. So the worst economic conditions, all other things being equal, and all other things are never equal, but it's good for us. It's good for us because all we need is enough cash flow to cover debt service. And on an asset that's falling like a falling knife in value, it's fine that the value goes down. It's okay that the cash flow goes down as long as the cash flow still covers debt service. And banks, financial institutions around the world were cutting unbelievably good deals. Unbelievably good deals. Now, it's not good for the seller, but the seller just wants out. So for those that are worried about doing good or hurting the seller, we're giving the seller a way out. We're helping them. I'm not saying that QLA is like the Red Cross or anything, but but we are helping. What else? Yeah.
Excuse me, I have a question. When you're doing acquisition in India or corrupt country like Venezuela
or Vietnam,
yes, sir. Have you ever encountered any situation where the seller stabbed you on the back?
You mean physically with a knife? No, I mean stab. Yeah, well, I a couple tried, but I'm a pretty big guy. But you mean where the seller did something that was metaphorically stabbing you in the back? Okay, yeah, absolutely. I mean, once they find out that they're going to be taken out and their pain's going to stop, many people, and that doesn't have to be in any third world country. It could be fucking Manhattan. They're gonna figure, well, fuck, this asshole has financed this. Maybe I could have refinanced it. Maybe I just didn't try hard enough. So they change the deal. They back out of the deal. I've had deals at the closing when everybody's signing the fucking papers. They back out and they decide they want more money. We've had fist fights break out at the closings. So yeah, I have experienced personally where the seller tries to change a deal and equate to stabbing the purchaser in the back. Well, I handled it. I choked him. The last time I did it, I physically choked him. That's why I have shall we say, the reputation I have from some people from in my heyday, so to speak, or back in the day, is pretty vividly aggressive. So I mean, but for fist fights, break out at closes. But I mean, most of you snowflakes would just get fucked. You just spread your cheek a little wider, so maybe they can get a 2x4 up your ass instead of his little weenie dick. And they know that, and that's why they get aggressive at the close. Because they know most people will just as you've taken it up the ass all your miserable fucking lives, you'll just pull your cheek a little wider and let them stick another dick up your ass. That's why people get aggressive at closings and change deals, because they know that you won't walk away. You won't. Because you're so used to being taken advantage of. Oh, well, fuck, I thought I'd get away with it, but I just let them stick a cricket bat up my ass now. And that's not much of an exaggeration, kids. I mean, it's just not. Just like your parents got fucked in the ass, just like your grandparents got fucked in the ass. And that's why you're getting fucked in the ass. And as Vinica would say, in a bad way. Now, some people like getting fucked up the ass if you enjoy it, but in a bad way. When they got a cricket bat up your ass and a baseball bat up your ass, and then 2 or 3 little weenie dicks up your ass, and then they put a broom handle up your ass, oh, I need to get the deal done. I guess it's okay. Instead of walking away. What else about the movie?
He held himself accountable.
Who held himself?
Well, the chairman or the CEO. Even though there were a lot of people involved, he blamed himself.
Well, it is. That's whose fault it is. And when the Secretary of Treasury came in on his knees, as legend has it, literally walked in on his knees, or not walked in, crawled in on his knees to tell these guys, you're going to do this, because, as it showed partially in the movie, that not everybody wanted it to go forward. Needless to say, the stronger financial institutions said, fuck you, why are we doing this? But the U.S. government can bring a lot of pressure. The CEOs of those banks, if they didn't agree, they could have been audited forever. They could have, the Department of Justice be on their back. Now, I'm told privately some of those words were exchanged, and so they ultimately acquiesced and they gave in. And then the government said, for the greater good and for the United States, and you're doing all this, they pull on your heartstrings that you're doing the right thing for your country, and et cetera, et cetera. And what they were really doing was the right thing for the legacy of the people that were coming after. And of course, in the Obama administration, that took over, and they took over a mess. There's no question about that. President Obama, when he was saying this is a fucking mess, he wasn't lying. But then they beat and they kicked that 2008-9 financial debacle. They're still blaming shit on it today in 2017. It's like when you throw out your CFO or the poor Klaus. They're going to be blaming poor Klaus for shit for 10 fucking years. They're going to be blaming him for actions that were taken subsequent to his leaving that he had nothing to do with. Because now we got an old ex-CEO to kick around. And just as they kicked my name around for years after. They blame me, 2092, 97 when they sold the company to a major independent, and they didn't cut such a good deal. I was gone 5 years, and it was my fault. If Peña had left this, and if Peña had left that, and if Peña hadn't pissed this guy off, we could have got a better deal for the shareholders. I was still the biggest shareholder, by the way. So the one that got fucked the most was me. What else about Too Big to Fail? Yeah.
What did they do with the money that they should have?
Oh, it's still in the banks today. It's still in the financial institutions today. That's why I know they're flush with cash. They're flush with cash. And what they really did is they tightened up their financial systems, procedures, etc., and they made it much harder for the small SME, small, medium-sized enterprise business to borrow money, and they made the paperwork unbelievably difficult. And back in those days, it was easier to get $5 million out of a financial institution than it was $50,000, or 50,000 pounds versus 5 million pounds. And it's still that way. Remember, it's the same amount of paperwork for the loan officer for a $50,000 credit or a $5 million credit. No extra paperwork. It's the same. All they do is fill in the zeros. So if you're a credit officer at a major financial institution and you need to get $500 million out in a year, isn't it easier to do $500 million loans as opposed to 20 times that if it was a $50,000 loan? Yeah, and it's Mr. Boilerplate over here, our resident attorney. It's just boilerplate. It might take an extra credit officer because normally, big loans have to be approved in written format by more than one person. Normally 2 or 3. But so what? So you just messenger around to another of the guys or gals, and he signs it. So it's no big deal. But the point of it that I want you to understand is, 1, normal supply and demand would have allowed them to go under. 2, that's never going to happen to you. They're never going to cut you slack that way. And 3, the world is flush with cash. And a lot of the cash that the world's still flush with is that cash that they printed off the printing press back in 2008, 9, and 10, which is still in the vaults of the financial institutions, and interest rates came down dramatically. So the assets that you could buy were more readily or more easily the debt paid off because of the low interest rates. And we're up maybe, 50 basis points now in the last year. But 50 basis points is 0.5%. And as I told you, if 1 or 2% additional debt service kills your deal, you don't have a deal. Because remember, I want you to have 30, 40, 50% margin businesses because one, it's a cushion, and two, because your management skills aren't going to be that great initially, and you'll do some mismanagement, but you'll still be able to cover the debt service. But and that movie's about 60 or 70% true, accurate. 60 or 70%. It's not 100% accurate, but it's pretty accurate. Anything else on Too Big to Fail?
What were the big inaccurate pieces?
Well, the inaccurate. Well, they in the background they were threatening the financial institutions that bad shit was going to happen to them, but that didn't come out in the movie. Paulson, who was Secretary of Treasurer, tried to do it, the honorable way initially, but he ultimately begged him, which he knew all those guys from his days at Goldman Sachs. He knew all of them because he was a well-respected financial guy, wealthy guy, from his days of being chairman, I believe, of Goldman Sachs. But all those guys know each other, and they still know each other. And I'm not saying they will collude, but each individual financial institution was looking out for itself first. Well, probably the CEO was looking out for his ass first, the shareholders second, and the institution as a whole third. And but it's no different than you. When push comes to shove with your board, and it's between you and your board's going to vote for them because they want to be protected. And then if them protecting themselves inadvertently protects you, that's okay. But that's, although all the press that comes out in the press that was coming out for Klaus, the board was behind him, yada, yada, yada. But something changed, and I still don't know what, but it'll come out. It'll come out. Maybe Klaus will write a book, but somebody's going to spill the beans. Anything else about Too Big to Fail?
Could you speak to the role that emotions played during the whole debacle?
Oh, yeah. Well, mine, I was hoping they'd go under. So I was, added to my prayer list. I was hoping they'd let all the things go under because then I knew that I would be like the fifth horseman, the apocalypse, riding down, just boom, heads off and taking their money. But that didn't happen. But the emotions for those guys, I think that the guy that portrayed the head of Lehman, which was Wood, the actor, he was desperate to try to get Lehman not be closed down. He was desperate. He called his buddies. During that whole thing, several of them at different times called Warren Buffett to bail him out. And Warren has an adage, which I believe he still adheres to. If I can't easily understand the financial tool or the vehicle or the product, I don't do it. And that was his primary reason. I believe he didn't bail out AIG. Because AIG had, I don't know, thousands of products, but they got a lot of them. Okay, YouTube. Thank you. See you later.